Okay, hi everyone. I think you can all hear me. Hear myself now. So, yeah, I feel really lucky actually with the setup of some of the speakers today, particularly the points that Ronan and Eric were making about the fact we're up against adversaries that are sharing and collaborating together, moving extremely quickly. And the points Eric was making about needing to innovate and move more quickly and address much of the debt, technology debt, knowledge debt, and technology and innovation not being able to innovate quickly enough. I think we're, definitely can all agree that we have too much to do. It's not getting any easier. We are continually having to secure new bits of our IT infrastructure as we're modernizing and moving workloads to the cloud, as we're modernizing applications, as we're moving our data sources and databases and data stores out to cloud and SaaS platforms. And what we need to do really as a whole market is look for ways that we can be more innovative, that we can move at the speed of the attackers are, and how we can deliver more effective security quickly. And it's a real problem today in that organizations, technology vendors like ourselves and our customers spend a lot of time dealing with proprietary interfaces, proprietary detection technologies, proprietary intelligence, and that this actually is a major factor in holding us back, and it actually is getting worse. So if we take a little bit of a step back and just look at, why are things getting worse? Why is this problem not getting any easier? How can we move? What's stopping us moving more quickly? Well, when we look across our customer base and organizations as a whole, there's like four main trends we see that is just adding to work. Fundamentally, it's giving security teams much more work and much more complexity. First of all, everyone is on some sort of cloud journey. That is essentially meaning additional security controls, and in many cases, additional security technologies to secure these new cloud infrastructures, new IT infrastructures, be it containers or SaaS service or cloud platforms. We know that people work from anywhere now. That is now driving the complete disappearance of the perimeter. So there's now additional controls, new concerns about these remote employees, remote unmanaged endpoints, accessing cloud services directly without coming back in via the VPN. Many organizations, IBM, and IBM's not alone, we're looking at how we can get rid of our VPN completely. So there's all of these new working practices are, again, giving the security teams more work to do. And at the same time, and we were talking about this over dinner last night, the increasing regulatory and privacy concerns as well are really amping up. So this is just tightening the noose in terms of, okay, what are all your controls around your existing infrastructure as well as your next generation infrastructure. And of course, as Ronan was saying and previous speakers, the threat environment is just continuing to evolve and get more and more intense. So as a result of this digital transformation that's happening, we're getting more and more tools, more and more security tools, more and more controls, more and more regulatory reports and audits to fulfill, and a much broader attack surface. And fundamentally, security is getting increasingly fragmented. I mean, I've been in the SIM business for 12 years now, and I remember when I joined Q1 Labs, and our CEO at the time saying, "There's too many security tools out there. Everything's going to consolidate onto one platform, and this is what it's going to look like." And that was 8 years ago. And actually, the problems just got worse, and it's continuing to get worse. We are starting to see the emergence of some of these platforms, but there's still a plethora of new, disconnected tooling out there to address not only existing infrastructure, but next generation cloud infrastructure, SaaS infrastructure, endpoints, OT, IoT, etc. And as a result, it's adding more work, and it's not valuable work. Actually, what we see in the industry is 50% of the cost of running security is integrating security systems to talk to each other. And the other 50% is actually spent on operationalizing the output and running the systems and actually leveraging and getting the value you want. That is a tremendous waste. First of all, it's a tremendous waste of resources and money, but also it is really slowing us down. And this is all because the industry doesn't have standards, doesn't have interoperability built in at its heart. It doesn't have the concept of openness and interoperability. Everything is a proprietary connection. Everything is a one-to-one integration. And it adds cost to us as vendors because we have to integrate with every other tool out there. And then it adds cost and time to end-user organizations as well when those integrations don't exist or when they become out of date. So this additional complexity is just opening up new opportunities for adversaries. It means organizations struggle with visibility. They struggle with workflow across these disconnected tools. How can I answer simple questions like, what did Chris do across my cloud, across my entire environment with a particular domain, or where have I seen this file or hash across my environment when it's spread across multiple clouds and SaaS services, for example. Then also with these different cloud environments, there's a real challenge in keeping up to date. Like, how do I keep my detections up to date? Log4j was a great example. There were weeks going by when we were seeing organizations who didn't have effective detection in place, whereas the attackers are moving like at this much, much faster. So keeping those detections up to date is like getting harder and harder as well, especially when the skills and availability of those skills is so challenged. I'm just fundamentally struggling to keep up with work. So one of the things that's really been growing in the industry and that IBM are really behind, and there's a group of us in the security unit have been really a driving force to try and grow this initiative and really widen it, is this concept of open security, where security tools, if you could imagine a world where security capabilities become truly plug and play. And that doesn't mean just have open APIs, REST APIs. It means actual true plug and play. To be able to, like you can today, where you can take servers from different companies and you can run operating systems on them and you can run applications on them and you don't need to worry about all the specifics. Imagine a world where you can take a SIM, an EDR, you can take the equivalent of a SIM that's looking after Azure or AWS and just connect it into your security platform and it just works. Your security teams are hidden from the complexities. The detections are can be shared and operationalized across that entire infrastructure. And then imagine a world then where with open security, you can leverage the power of the whole community to take detections and response actions that are best practice and have been developed in the click of a finger and use them effectively in your organization. Do you know that Log4j is a great example of this? Log4j was announced on Thursday in the first week of December, and there were open source detections within an hour available. Within an hour, the community had come together and were collaborating, hundreds of them, hundreds of engineers across different companies and providers were collaborating on open detection logic. The challenge is, of course, the tooling out there in the industry doesn't fully support that. And of course, you need more than just one piece. You need the full end-to-end life cycle to fully operationalize that. So we believe that open security is a real game changer in terms of really helping deliver innovation more quickly, help deliver remove some of that legacy, proprietary, technical debt, and address a lot of the skills challenges, and fundamentally allow us as an industry to respond more quickly. So when we think about the challenges of that we have around closed security, and which is where we really are today for the most part, we've got a bunch of proprietary technologies with vendor-specific APIs that we spend a bunch of time integrating with and keeping up to date. There's no real community collaboration about making sure that security systems can talk to each other in a meaningful, real way. There's vendors, lots of vendor-specific content out there. I mean, I'm a vendor. I really like it when we do some really smart analytics or rules, and then we write a blog up and we push that content out to our customers. But it's only us. Like, why does it need to be us? It should really be the whole community doing that. That's how we can best defend ourselves. And then we end up with these lots of fragmented tools and interfaces, which means organizations just spend time trying to, how do I stop my analysts having to visit 10 different screens and translate from queries from one language to another, depending on I need to check my endpoints, I need to check the network, I need to check Azure, I need to check my on-premise infrastructure. Whereas with open security, we can move to a world where there are open standards and proper interoperability, where if I have a detection, I can just issue that detection out to my platforms and they will operationalize it. I don't need to worry about all the vendor-specific implementation. I can use best-of-breed capabilities, or I can just use what's free from a cloud vendor if it makes sense for my business. Or if I've invested in a big logging platform with all the data in it that my security analysts need, I should just be able to connect that to my security system or platform and be able to leverage it without having to spend days and weeks integrating it. And this will fundamentally allow us as a community to collaborate more effectively. So where we can take that log4j, for example, log4j detection example, and actually just use it and operationalize it immediately, instead of having to take that and translate it into all the tools and languages that amongst the myriad of something like, 80 tools typically most SOCs have in their organization. And that will just help us move more quickly at reducing blind spots and responding to threats. So there's lots of benefits from this, and Eric touched upon this need to innovate and move more quickly. Ronan talked about the fact that these attackers are collaborating and sharing. We can now collaborate and share and operationalize that much more quickly. And actually at IBM, this is something that it goes right to the top in IBM. Our CISO now is, Kuz moved into the role around 4 years ago now. And he has now got to the point where we're well on our down the road of a zero trust journey involving on moving all of our internal business run applications out to the cloud. We leverage SaaS services for HR, for payroll, for travel, for everything, file sharing and collaboration. And we also leverage our own internal security team. But he has really said, this has got too complex now. We're spending too much time integrating. We're too slow to respond. So he's insisting that new technologies really adopt open source and open standards. And IBM, along with McAfee, started an open cybersecurity alliance a couple of years ago under the OASIS program. Really, and we now have over 20 vendors in there. So we have big companies in there, like actually CrowdStrike are in there, McAfee are in there, Trend Micro have joined, Rapid7, etc. And they are all now in there around defining open source and open standards. Open standards first, but then supported by open source code. And it's really effective. It basically means that organization, say, for example, we define a query API for how a system should be able to query another security system to get information, for example, what domains did Chris visit in the last week, for example. But actually now submitting open source code into GitHub for each of the technology vendors in the industry, so that now we have that one API that can be shared. And what's really exciting is we're starting to see that being used. We're using it, and I've got some examples coming up of how we're leveraging that, but also companies like Trend Micro. Trend Micro have taken that technology, embedded it in their XDR product, as has McAfee. This is really powerful now because it means we're sharing that integration layer and we're using these open source and open standards. So if we just take an example of, just quickly, of how this can actually, some tangible examples of how it is being leveraged. If we look at, a SOC today, there's never just one system you go to for visibility or response or investigation. And as previous slides, this is getting more complex. You have your SIM for your logging. You typically will have an EDR, obviously, for endpoint, because that's where all the attacks are coming in, and you need protection and be able to block and respond very quickly. And then typically most organizations also will look at the network because you'll have gaps in what your logs are telling you, and you don't have ED endpoints everywhere, so you need that network level visibility. But then, of course, there's many more tools in terms of visibility here, especially when you start going to the cloud and you start looking at containerized workloads. And this actually just results, on the left-hand side, some of that complexity that I talked about. Analysts, typically, you might get all your alerts into one place, but they'll end up pivoting off into lots of different tools. But with open source and open standards, we can actually create unified workflows that work with any tool, because we have those standard APIs and standard interfaces and standard ontologies for how information is exchanged and how information and the APIs for exchanging that information. And this enables this world of, okay, where everyone wants to be over there on the left. Obviously, I'm an IBM vendor. I want everyone to buy IBM stuff, but that's not always going to happen. The real world is there. Organizations have made investments already. There may be new technologies you want to use because they're free. They just come with cloud platforms or come embedded. What open source and open standards enable you to do are start delivering simplicity, simplified workflows, simplified outcomes, operationalized community content effectively and quickly across whatever tooling makes sense. And this is just an example of, if I just walk through some tangible examples we're now using with customers and internally in leveraging these open source communities and content. So first of all, we have, attack is a great way to manage your attack surface. So now you no longer have to think about, what tactics and techniques should I address and have some science project around it. There's now open source, open standards around that, and that's well adopted. Now then we move to, okay, I understand my gaps, how do I close them? Now Sigma is very powerful in the open source community as a way of defining that detection that's vendor neutral. And now with the OCA and a project within the OCA called Stick Shifter, I can actually take that content and I can run it against all my systems in a vendor neutral way. And I can see if I'm being attacked, if I've got that particular attack vector being controlled, being used in my environment. So all very simple, much simpler than where we are today. And you could have multiple systems sitting beneath that. But because they're all using open source and open standards, you can simplify the output workflow for the user. Another example is then on the response side of things. Gathering all those alerts from your cloud platform, your endpoint, your network, your SIM, your container security, bringing those together, and then automating investigation. Being able to then build that one timeline across what's happened across your environment. That's possible with open source and open standards. We're not letting vendor proprietary technologies get in the way and the interfaces. And then finally, when we want to take action, OpenC2. Well, again, part of what we're doing in the OCA is starting to define open standards and open APIs for how we respond, how we can mitigate in a vendor neutral and vendor agnostic way. So all of this really takes us to a potential future where open security can really enable us to deliver unification and simplicity for our users. It can deliver innovation. It can really deliver innovation because now we're not, the innovation isn't tied to specific companies with specific technology. They can leverage the technologies out there and leverage the full community in terms of those capabilities. And enable and deliver a world where we can start connecting security tools together in a fraction of the time that we do today. And give that choice, enable that choice for organizations around where they run their security platforms, what security tooling they need to use for your specific industry or whatever makes business sense at the time. But importantly, getting away from that, having to spend 50% of your resources doing that integration work and keeping it up to date. And fundamentally allowing us to respond more quickly to attackers.